Hello and warm welcome to Big Talk on Global Television. I am Idikan Michael. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the show tonight. We'll be taking a look at the foreign scene, issues in the foreign scene, where the opposition candidate of Bassirou Faye, of course, has emerged the president of Senegal, and the supporters have rallied in the street to rejoice over their candidates, emerging in the Senegal's presidential election. Faye's victory is coming just a week after his release from prison, but his main rival from the ruling coalition insisted that the second round will be necessary to ascertain the winner. The winner will have to steer Senegal, viewed as a beacon of democracy in a cool-hit West Africa, out of 3 years of turbulence and a political crisis, and managed revenues from oil and gas reserves that are shortly to start production. So there are some level of uncertainty over the outcome of the unprecedented vote, but with official results, of course, was released at the end of today. We'll be taking a look at the absolute majority that is required for the first round. Joining me for the discussion, we'll also be taking a look at the issues in Nigeria, where the president has placed a 3-month embargo on ministers not to travel out of this country in a proceed to cut costs of governance. These are the issues we'll be taking a look at tonight, and be joined by Barrister Kanemo Bassey, who joins us at the convention today. Good to have you join us, Barrister.
Good evening.
Yeah, so take a look at Senegal. What does this really signify to Africa? A young 44-year-old Faye emerging as the president of Senegal. How do you feel?
Thank you so much. This is good for Africa. In the run-up to these elections, there have been a lot of tensions in Senegal. But you see, I like us to look at the narrative that led to where the youths in Senegal have been able to take destiny into their hands. Bassirou Faye was imprisoned on trumped-up political charges, or on charges that were said to be politically motivated. But the people were resolute. They stood their grounds, they took the destiny into their hands, and more importantly, they believed his manifesto. I want us to look at it from the perspective that Africa is beginning to look at the agenda of the youths. And sincerely speaking, right now in Senegal, there's a lot of goodwill for Faye, and it is good for Africa. It's a welcome development.
Part of these issues has been, issues of succession, where the incumbent always tried to find a way of trying to impose. Do you feel that this is a good signal for the incumbent president to relinquish power to someone who he really wasn't really in support of?
Well, in the present circumstance, I don't see him having any choices or chances. In time past, all over the world, succession is a matter of the establishment. But now in Africa, it becomes like a family line. It is almost always seen as a birthright. So Faye's win, or supposed win, in the presidential elections, or the vote count, is a break in the tradition. He's a trailblazer. And that's why I said it's good for Africa. Not necessarily because of his age. But you see that a lot of goodwill comes with youthful input in politics. When you see a younger person come into power, there is a lot of goodwill among the population. If they have a good agenda and they mean it, then they'll help their country. I listened to the address by one of his key supporters who was also imprisoned with him, and he talked about decolonization of their country from France. As much as I do not want us to follow the exact narrative of the rumbles that France is having in its Francophone countries, they have points. They have a point in saying, look, the destiny of Africa should be handled by Africans. Enough of this exploitation. Enough of this neo-colonization. Enough of this neo-exploitation. 3 questions stand out. Why is it that you are controlling our resources and we are still poor? Take a look at the English-dominated countries, or the countries that were colonized by the Britons, and the Francophone countries that were colonized by France. There's a marked departure. There's a difference. Whereas England has let go and allowed those countries to muddle up themselves, France is exploiting these resources, and yet there is no meaningful development. So what is the difference between them and African leaders that have decided to loot their countries dry and encourage corruption? So it's a welcome development for Africa. I want to see Senegal take the center stage in the coming years to be able to evolve participatory democracy, to be able to take up issues of development for themselves in a way and manner that will take to the trash bin all what Africa has been suffering in the past.
And now, taking a look at in Nigeria, INEC and other African countries, the elections umpire, do you feel that this stands and speaks so well of Africa for the umpire not to compromise? Because it takes a look at the fact that this has been a very transparent election by all means of standard of judging elections.
Well, I'll always say that the problems of Nigeria or African democracies are not necessarily the institutions that are directly related to the outcome of elections. It is the people, it is the individuals. It is even the people that determine how the system either goes away with some of the blunders they do or carries out its primary functions well. I'll take an example. The Independent National Electoral Commission in Nigeria, from day one, it will be very difficult for you to pin any misconduct on INEC, because INEC is established by an act of National Assembly, and they have laid down rules that are guided by the Electoral Act and the guidelines of the Electoral Commission. Now, who make up INEC? Who are the returning officers? Who are the staffs of INEC? Who work there? The process that leads to elections are being controlled by the people. I've said it before, politics is local. So if a particular candidate loses elections and now puts up the blame on an institution, it's grossly unfair. In Senegal, the incumbent government controlled the electoral body. Were they able to succeed? No, because the people stood their grounds and said, no, this is what we want. So it is always about the people. Where there is manifest compromise by the people over who leads them, this is what you face. For Nigeria, my only regret has always been that I had expected that as a fallout of the NSAS protest, younger candidates would be thrown up for presidential elections. But we didn't see that, so we had to make do with the best we had. And this is just where Africa has its problems. The earlier, younger candidates, people with fresh ideas, fill up the ballot box, then we can start talking.
Do you feel that the political parties have a role to play in this?
A whole lot of it, a whole lot.
From emerging from the primaries, there's always been a tussle where we are still finding it very hard for that young people have been given the ticket to fly the party flags.
Let me be honest with you. Before now, younger people have always chosen to be relegated to the background, to play second fiddle, running around politicians, carrying out their demands, taking money.
But it started lately. Prior to this time, we had young people that were...
Yes, there is a greater level of awareness. More and more people are getting interested in the electoral process. They're asking questions, they're taking it personal. Before, there was a serious apathy during elections. That's why I said it's a good omen for Africa. And I expect that it will spread, not just in the Francophone countries, but also in the English-dominated countries. It's good for Africa by all standards. But more importantly, you see, in Nigeria some time back, there was a young man called Murtala Muhammad, who was a very young man, though in the military. You can see the goodwill that came with Murtala Muhammad. So there's always that goodwill that comes with a younger candidate, a younger blood. And traditional people will say, when the gods are with you, then you have a lot of favor. So I wish Senegal well. I pray that in the entire calculation of all the votes, because the first round is not over. They're still counting the votes, and Bassirou Faye has actually led by a very wide majority. So that's why you're seeing the news is being expected to be declared winner. I hope nothing goes wrong, because that will be a turning point for that country. That country has been plagued by a lot of political crisis. If anything goes wrong with that vote, then hell will be let loose in Senegal, and that's not good for Africa. I will encourage the incumbent president to let go and hand over power properly, because he would be seen as a genius. He will have a place in history, having left the scene for a younger candidate to emerge. So, but there's a lot of responsibility on the incoming president. It's not just about celebrating that a younger person has emerged president. What are you bringing to the table? A lot of sacrifices has to be made for his country to move forward. He needs to take the greatest majority of the young people of Senegal out of poverty. And that is a task before.
So a lot of expectations are on him. a very impressive move. Let's
Yes.
believe that, of course, our eyes are still on Senegal to look at a lot of developments in respect to the elections, and of course, a subsequent swearing-in of fire, which is everybody's wish, of course, to see a new leave for the people of Senegal, and that is our expectations tonight. We're moving away from the Senegal. We're taking a look at the Nigeria's factor, where the president has placed a 3-month ban for the ministers, heads of government agencies, parastatals, not to embark on any public-funded foreign trips. Is this a move to reduce cost of government? Is this the right steps to go about it? Would this in any way affect the issues that we are drumming in the country? Legal practitioner Kanemo is still with me here on the studio to take a look at this. Of course, we heard the news of the president trying to make a move, a bold move to see how they can actually reduce some foreign trips by the ministers and heads of agencies and government. Some people are saying it has no percentage to affecting to what we are really in the country. But do you feel that the president move is with good intentions?
Yeah, let's face facts. Let's face facts the way they are. The president has the power to regulate the conduct of its appointed officers. It is a good step in the right direction, but you see, for me, I've always looked at it from the other side. While it is commendable that Mr. President, through the Office of the Chief of Staff, has placed a temporary ban on ministers and officials of the federal government embarking on foreign trips or seeking approval for such trips as the case may be, yes, it is a cost-cutting measure. It will reduce the cost and reduce pressure on the foreign exchange. I don't really see much of cutting costs. I see that also as a move to control the dollar-naira crisis. And that is good, because don't forget, as these people leave the country, they go with dollars, which is already in short demand. And so putting a ban on them will also save some dollars, for the government. But beyond that, the issues we keep asking is it just a ban on foreign trips that reduces costs? Already as we speak, the government itself is running a bloated workforce. The expenditure of government is high.
I've never had this number of ministers.
Yes, it's been there all the while. It's just that it's now pronounced. So it's always high. So is it just about cutting foreign trips? No. What I expect to see government do is to create an enabling structure, to put in place checks and balances to ensure that its public officers at the federal level and also at the state level reduce their costs. The budget as passed is in trillions. Does the federal government have that money? No. One way of implementing the budget successfully is to reduce overhead costs. I can assure you that as much as this is the right step in the right direction, there is a lot more for government to do to reduce cost. I'll give you a number of examples. Apart from the implementation of the Orosanye report and reducing the workload of several ministries, departments, and parastatals of government, I expect to see government put in an expenditure code that will be applicable to all ministries and agencies on regulating the level of expenses it makes, the quantum of expenditure it makes. Yes, there will be a fallback. It only ensures that government runs a lean purse, and that is good for the country, because it will not need to be looking for where to borrow money to even fund the budget. If you're able to cut costs, every organization cuts costs. If you're able to cut costs at your level, then you would have saved your financial crisis by half. So it's a welcome development, but there is a lot more to be done.
Because some aspects of people, some Nigerians are arguing, we have 109 senators, have 360 House of Reps. These are the people that still have to travel out of this country, for some foreign engagement. And we also find it that a good number of allocations have been given to the National Assembly, either buying bulletproof cars for the senators, buying these for them and all of that. That these are really the people that are not doing anything in the country. And of course, I'm not meant to be spent on. Because if you look at telling the Orosanye reports, recommending the fact that some ministries must be merged and all of that, it might be a step in that direction. But what happened to the National Assembly?
I have a problem with people who claim that the National Assembly is not doing anything. We are operating a democracy. Don't forget, the Senate and House of Representatives, which make up the National Assembly, is an independent arm of government. The executive cannot regulate it nor control what it does. The Constitution has actually provided for checks and balances as it has to do with governance. But on its expenditure, the National Assembly is self-recreating. It is independent on its own and has powers to regulate its own expenditure.
But it's not generating any funds.
But any Nigerian who says the National Assembly is not doing anything is deceiving himself, because the National Assembly is empowered by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended to make laws. And the making of laws is an extinct work on its own in a democratic dispensation. Yes, it is incumbent on the leadership of the National Assembly to also evolve its cost-cutting structures to reduce costs, because we are looking at the cost of governance. But people saying they are not doing anything, I disagree with that. The National Assembly, in my opinion, is one of the busiest departments of our democracy.
But we are fine.
Because every area in this country is represented by a member of the House of Representatives and by a senator.
And some people are saying if you have a senator representing a particular state, it would have been enough. One senator per state, well, and in the House of Reps having one or two.
That is an argument for another day, because we are operating a democracy that we accepted.
How about the parliamentary system of government that some House of Reps members
There are still
proposed?
demerits of the parliamentary system. One demerit of the parliamentary system is that the executive is also, the members of the executive are also members of the parliament. And that breeds corruption. It leads to unnecessary bureaucracy.
So do you feel the House of Reps and the Senate is still really good enough away from strengthening the sector?
Yes, that's an legislative arm of government. It is incumbent upon the chairman of the National Assembly, who is the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives to also institute and bring out structures that will check their costs. Don't forget, the Constitution specifically and clearly provides that allocations to the National Assembly are through the Consolidated Revenue Fund. You can't touch it. You can't. If the executive is trying to cut its own costs, fine. The legislature should also bring out its own ways and means of checking and cutting its costs. Don't forget, there's also another arm of government, the judiciary. The judicial arm of government also gets its own allocation. And on its own also evolves its ways of cutting costs. But generally, Nigerians want to see a system where all arms of government join hands and cut their costs. The problem with Africans is, when we say cost of governments, that is not checking corruption on its own. Because politicians still have their ways of taking
I'm going to come to that.
Yeah,
I'm going to come to that because it's also affecting the growth. Why do we find budgets of ministries and parastatal and agencies being augmented? We'll find some unnecessary itemizations on some of their requests. The minister that have recently been suspended by the president in a move to travel to some state in the country, even captured in his proposal writing for the approval. Some state that does not even have an airport was reflected on that very memo. This has been an issue. We find government ministries, prices of budget being augmented at the detriment of the economy. Is it really helping to us? Because these are also the moves to also see how, because the situation is right. We are in a mess. We're in a critical situation. And for us to get out of where we are, things must be done. Adjustment must be made. But we are still finding this very hard in ministries.
Well, the suspended Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Betta Edu, was accused of certain infractions in the administrative and financial procedures of our ministry. Well, I cannot comment on that because the government itself had set up its own enabling structure to investigate.
I only use a dimension because of the memo that and you have seen.
But you see, we also must understand the fact that the social media space in Nigeria has become polluted and contradictory. A lot of the information we get about government is from the social media. And a lot of it are compromised. Don't forget, politicians still control the social media. So it's very easy for a politician to put money in the social space. And we all read what we want, what a particular person wants us to believe. A lot of even the leaked memo we saw, they are all speculatory. Nobody has been able to pin it to evidence. It's left for the committees and agencies of government that have been endowed with these tasks to unravel these things. However, one point must be noted. In Nigeria particularly, over the years, we've had politicians abuse the financial system, collaborating with bank managers, collaborating with corrupt persons in bodies, agencies, and ministries and parastatals of government. We need to see a regeneration. Persons occupying exalted public offices need to understand the code, each code of governance. That it is not just about running after money, but following due process. As we speak, there are established procedures of spending money, approving money, even in the civil service. And this does not exonerate civil servants. Who prepares the budget? Is it not civil servant? Do you know the racketeering that occurs during the budgeting process? Or reports of such? So I expect to see government internalize and institutionalize structures and enabling systems to check corruption from the basis, from the ground level up across ministries, across agencies, and across institutions. For example, in the civil service, we have a code. I'm aware that there is an established code in the civil service that regulates the conduct of public servants. We need to see these two taken to the next level on finances, on spending, on money, on the way government fund is spent and utilized. And I must commend this present administration for the steps it is taking. And you see, we must leave this bandwagon syndrome of attacking anybody we see in the name of picketing government institutions. We must appreciate that government itself is also looking inwards and putting its house in order. What we expect to see is robust plan and implementation by government and its agencies. Reprimand public officers who flout these rules and who fall short of these expectations. And we saw it in the suspension of the then Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. Politics notwithstanding, sentiments notwithstanding. We want to see more of government using the hammer and using the big stick. And the better for the citizenry, the better for the country.
Because that has always been the intentions of Nigeria. They just want to see some government making effort. We find that the last administration spent, President Muhammadu Buhari, former president, spent almost some good number of times abroad because of issues of foreign trips, treatment and all of that. Because we were just talking about stopping ministers from traveling. Now I was speaking with a doctor still on the program, and he made mention of the fact that over there in abroad, he still finds Nigerian politicians coming in for treatment. Isn't this at the detriment of our hospitals, where we are having a health sector decaying currently, finding people going out because of treatment to another country? Isn't that supposed to be regulated properly and forced to manage? Because we are talking of saving dollars away from traveling.
Every Nigerian, whether a public official or a private citizen, is entitled to seek health care or help outside the country, so long as he's able to pay for his health, for his visa fees, and able to foot the bill. Why not? If not, there is no law stopping any citizen of Nigeria from traveling abroad, either for medical care or to seek medical support. However, the issue is, and has always been, about public officials. Are they not Nigerians? If they can afford it, why not? The general problem among Nigerians is that we don't even trust ourselves. And so despite the humongous investment of government in health care,
it's not being felt.
It's very hard for people to even trust the system they have established.
Have you gone to the hospital?
I am telling you that it is very hard for Nigerians to trust even their healthcare system, including the poor ones who are complaining. If you have a terminal ailment, my brother, and you have the financial wherewithal to seek help abroad, wouldn't you go? Would you go to a government hospital out of patriotism, and maybe while you are being admitted, the light goes off? So, but these are the issues these are the issues we expect to see government officials take seriously. The president's executive order or instruction to ministers not to travel for a span of 3 months is a welcome development. But we want to see a more robust system of checking public officials from reckless spending, from actions that put themselves at par with the system they propagate, so that when a public official is sick, let him go to the hospital in the country that he has also helped build. But this is just a matter of words. It is easy to say and difficult to do. Who will stop who from traveling abroad? There was a time in this country that almost everyone was traveling to India. You will agree with me that has reduced drastically because we have more and more hospitals in Nigeria doing those things that people traveled abroad. But beyond it, it's about trust in the system. Nigerians need to begin to build trust in their own healthcare systems, in the systems of the Nigerian systems, whether it is healthcare or the academia. Look at the education. There are more Nigerians outside looking for admission in foreign universities than in Nigerian schools because of perennial strikes, because of perennial issues with the educational system. Every day we keep hearing that the educational system is not being funded properly. Academic staff, non-academic staff, senior staffs wake up anytime and go on strike. Students don't set a target of their time in school and meet it up. I remember when I went back to study law. Before then, when I had my first degree, I didn't graduate at the year after I graduated because of the perennial ASUU strike. It was a year or two added. These are the reasons why people go out. So when government begins to assure its citizens that the educational system is stable, the healthcare system is stable and dependable, then Nigerians can begin to build confidence in these systems. And the earlier we do that, the better. I expect to see government invest more and more in ethical reorientation of its citizens and going a step further to ensure that what it spends its money on can be pointed at is feasible. For instance, you say you build a multi-million-dollar hospital. Nigerians need to see that this sees the light of day and Nigerians can trust the healthcare system. The same thing with academic institutions. We also need to see, as the citizens of our country, invest more on trusts. We have trust issues with government institutions. That's why you are seeing this mass exodus and brain drain syndrome, both in the healthcare and in the academic institutions we have in the country.
President Tinubu has spent 3.4 billion on local and foreign travel within his first 6 months of office. And this has nothing to do with the 2.49 million embarked for the president travel expenditures in 2023 budget and all of this. Do you feel that this president is trying to continue from what President Muhammadu Buhari did? Because what are you traveling for? Several meetings, sometimes it's unknown, and they tells us he's going to France and all of that. Nigerians are finding that very absorbed. Why?
Nigerians need to understand that once you elect a president, you have to allow the president to do his job. There's a lot of what government does.
Are you not to stay here to do the job?
There are a lot of that government does that is not in the public domain. However, that is not to say that the presidency itself should not regulate its trips. I am sure they are doing that. And beyond that, I'm also sure, I want to believe that they also have an enabling structure and mechanism to control and monitor its own action. It's very easy for citizens to criticize government, but very difficult when you're in the system and you see what government is doing. The presidency as an institution or an organ or structure of government cannot come out and tell the citizens every second what it does. And the ripple effects. We are seeing the ripple effects. Most of those foreign trips are bringing in foreign direct investments that are creating jobs. But you see, what Nigerians want to see is these things coming to stay that you can touch. It's not just in criticizing the government to say you are traveling abroad, we can't feel it. No, you mustn't feel it now. Some of it, you feel it in the long term. Well, like the past administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, it's very difficult to comprehend. We look at the statistics. Let the National Bureau of Statistics tell us what was the volume of foreign direct investment that came. What was the volume of foreign investments and inputs from outside Nigeria? Rather, we had shortage of the dollar. Rather, we had a dollar crisis. So Nigerians need to look inwards too, and the government itself need to prove itself. So I disagree with those who say that the trips embarked upon by the President and Commander-in-Chief are futile. I disagree with them. Because much of even the data we have, like the figures you are calling on foreign trips, they are within this realm of speculation. Was it released by a government agency? Was it released by the National Bureau of Statistics? Can we rely on that data? No. We live in a country where everybody plays politics. But that is not to say that government itself should not regulate its expenses.
How about government trying to block some leakage, from talking of revenue and all of that? For instance, the recent one with the Binance executive who was in the custody of National Security Advisor, but found his way out of the country, and now they have declared him wanted. And it was a concern about the fact that they were not complying with the economic reality of the country, no payment of tax, no registration, and all of that, and some other sectors of government. Some leakage in government in regards to management of revenue. This is also affecting and boosting our economy. What's your concern about that area?
I don't want to believe that we live in a zoo republic. It is laughable. And I wouldn't even believe that any government official will come out and declare somebody either arrested, wanted. Are you saying that he was kept in a palace or he was not kept behind bars? That's laughable. And because I have not seen any government official come out to say that he escaped jail or he escaped detention, I can't comment on that. However, all the efforts of this present administration going after cryptocurrencies and those other financial sectors is to stabilize the dollar. I will not comment on what I don't know much about, because much of even what we are practicing presently came from outside. But you see, the central bank lately has been very resolute and firm in checking the fall of the naira. And they are achieving a lot of success. We just need to encourage them. Whether it takes the arrests of foreign aid executives, I don't know. But we are seeing results. The dollar is going down. But we want to see it go really, really, really down. There's no reason why dollars will exchange for 500 naira in this country.
Do you feel we'll get there?
For an oil-producing country, yes. They just need to put up their sleeves and put in more effort without necessarily destroying the system. I read online some days back that the CBN had started disbursing $10,000 to each bureau de change. I hope that works, because that reduces the racketeering, but more importantly ensures that there is availability of dollars for those who actually need it. And sincerely, we still go back to the political class. Who are those who readily have access to these dollars or foreign currency? It's the politicians. So I think it's a house cleaning exercise. And the earlier, the better, if that will help. What Nigerians want to see is not how many Binance or cryptocurrency executives are being arrested. The Nigerians want to see and feel that the dollar has actually come down, so that the standard of living upon which we depend on much of our foreign exchange, Nigerians will heave a sigh of relief.
All right, we'll go on a quick short break right now. Once we return, we're taking a look at the structures and how government must put in place to reduce the cost of governance and also see how they can actually manage a strong and viable economy. These are part of the discussion. We'll be taking a look after the short break. Don't go away, stay with us. But it's time for still stay with us on Big Talk tonight. So, of course, we're taking a look at the issues of cost of governance in the country and the president's move on placing embargo on ministers for 3 months not to travel for foreign trips. And this has, of course, a broad concern on what are other ways, what are the systems that must be put in place away from the embargo on foreign trips to reduce the cost of governance. We'll be taking a look at the issues of course, I'm still having a legal practitioner joining me for the discussion. Take a look at the Soyuz report, the merging of some similar ministries, people who are interplaying some of their roles. Do you feel this will be able to save, cost, in managing? How would they be able to affect the losing of jobs? Because as you said, sometimes it's not just about the institutions, it's about the people, who are in these other institutions. We are finding you are trying to merge people, who are already practicing in a particular institutions, or already corrupt in a particular institution. How do you feel this can be able to work and How can costs be, how will you reduce costs here? Because they will still have to make their budget.
Nigerians must accept, both Nigerians, the citizens and the political class must accept that the cost of governance is high. Government has been running a very bloated budget, and a lot of that budget is on expenses that the Nigerian political class cannot really account for. And this creates opportunities for corruption. It creates loopholes for corruption. However, I like us to look at it from this perspective. Government has a duty and a responsibility to ensure that it runs a leaner government, like other countries across the globe. Even the United Kingdom, if you listen to the news, you see that the UK Parliament has initiated and introduced new measures at reducing cost of government. Nigeria should not be an exception. All over the world, due to global economic crisis, countries are cutting costs so that they will not need to borrow because the debt burden is high. There is an area that Nigerians have not looked at. The federal government is trying to cut its costs. What about the state government? There's a whole lot of bloated expenditure at the state level.
The state
governors are gods upon themselves. No one checks them. It is what the state governor decides that any ministry in the state will get. The governors too need to cut costs and check their costs. Because it is the subnationals that make up the federation. It is not enough that the federal government is cutting costs. The state governors and the state government should cut its costs. I expected to see, like the federal government put a ban on its officials, the state governors should go ahead and put a ban on their own officials except where it is absolutely necessary. The local governments. So it shouldn't just be on a particular tier of government. It should cut across the tiers of government. So that the federal government, the state government, and the local government will operate a lean purse. The federal allocation, the FAC, that is a platform where they sit down and share money. It's not only to the federal government. The federal government takes a share. The state governments take their share. Local governments take their share. Even though it is alleged that the state governors abuse local government funds. But we need to see most cost-cutting measures at the state level. Because state governors and state governments have operated even more bloated budgets. And don't forget, this is the tier and structure of government that is closer to the people. So Nigerians expect to see more cost-cutting measures, not just from the federal level of government, but from even the state governments and their local counterparts. We need to see cost-cutting measures across ministries, across institutions of government, across arms of government, both either the executive, or the legislature, and the judicial arm of government. That's when we can have a balanced federation. Beyond that, beyond cutting cost of government, what we should be asking is, are we cutting out corruption, or we're just cutting costs of running government? It's one thing to, yes, it is one thing to cut the cost of running government, and another thing to cut the loopholes through which public officers and politicians steal money. So we may be blocking one pipe and another pipe and allowing the other pipe to even leak more.
Which other pipe is that?
Because if you say cutting costs, it's just what the citizens hear. The political class still have their means of taking money out.
Which other means?
For example, we've had many state governors say they are distributing food under the canopy of distributing food to the vulnerable. In some states, people die. Who is policing that process? Who is looking at that process? Some states call it bulk purchase. Some states call it subsidy. Well, it appears good. But I hope this will also be a conduit pipe, because it is commonplace in Nigeria to see people take advantage of opportunities of government to enrich themselves. Don't forget, during the COVID era, we had a lot of sleazes and malfeasance in the name of COVID. So, as much as we are trying to cut cost of governance, Nigerians want to see greater transparency, greater accountability by the officers and organs of government in not only cutting cost of governance, but also blocking the loopholes through which corruption and embezzlement of funds take place in public institutions. And that is why I said that beyond cutting cost of governance, we need to see a code, an operational code in government institutions, in structures of government, to check the limits through which government even spends money. Before now, for instance, we have what we call the security vote, where governors can easily plunge, take money, and in the name of emerging security threats, and these monies are not accountable. We should be able to see a code that regulates even the disbursement of these security votes, and a greater accountability to the Nigerian public. So it is a commendable effort for government to cut costs, but let us have details. What costs are you exactly cutting? Are you cutting the costs of low-cadre public officials and leaving the expenses of those that are highly placed? It has to be balanced. You need to create a balance so that the earlier Nigeria operates a leaner expenditure economy, the better for these things to be plowed back into the real economy.
Issues has been that confidence must be built within the minds of Nigerians. Do you feel that our eyes are really on the president this time, trying to do differently? When you see the president making an attempt, to place embargo on the ministers, he is a way of responding to the fact that these are the realities that we are. And of course, I'm making an effort to see what it can do. But what do you feel all other things that the president can do to boost the confidence of Nigerians in a critical time like this? Because, of course, you won't blame Nigerians. We have never been in this hard situation before.
It is true that Mr. President may have acted or taken those decisions based on reports he gets. Don't forget, he's also advised by the CBN governor and the economic team. So they know also that ministers and public officials who leave this country for whatever reasons, some say they attend conferences, some go on foreign trips, that it places a demand on the dollar. Remember I said it is also a way of reducing the pressure on the dollar. Because it is what they will make demand on CBN. Give us dollars, we are traveling. My trip has been approved. So it is that's why I said it's a right step by Mr. President, cutting down those trips and reducing pressure on the CBN to provide foreign currencies for these trips, so that those who actually need them can have access to them, can find it available. Secondly, you will agree with me that a lot of the corruption that goes on in public service, these people don't keep stolen money in Naira. It is on the dollar. So when you make it difficult for people to steal government funds and they can't find the dollars to translate it to, you have reduced corruption by half. So beyond all of this, it is the political will of government to implement these decisions and get results that comes to play at the end. But I want to see attention to shift to state governments. I want to see state governors too initiate measures and policies that check and reduce its cost of governance, to such extent that you will have greater employment opportunities for the citizenry and greater opportunities for the real economy to regenerate. Because the real economy suffers. The SME sector of the economy are suffering because they are the ones that feel the real impact of this backlash. Beyond the fuel subsidy that was removed, the unavailability of the dollar for the average businessman to buy either raw materials from outside or to buy what he wants from outside places a demand on the economy. And that's why you see the Naira being stressed. So but you see that this action of Mr. President has eased pressure on the dollar. And we wait to see the positive outcomes.
Right. So do you feel that we have a better days for Nigeria?
We're expectant. We hope so. If it doesn't work, Nigerians will see it. And then we'll be able to look inwards and ask ourselves, where's the sabotage coming from? Of course, I need you to know that if there is any sabotage on the financial system, it is from within.
And then that problem has been naming them. Because up to now, we don't even know the registered.
Well, I believe that the government is taking serious steps. Don't forget, a week ago, government announced and listed some names of financiers of terrorism. That's a step in the right direction. And then going a step further to create enabling structures to check them and bring them to book. That is good.
We have not found that information.
No. Nigerians must not have all the information at their fingertips. This is in the public domain. Government has made these announcements. We are yet to see. Let us see if they can take the extra steps of creating instruments to cripple avenues through which people from outside finance terrorism. Don't forget, these people too are using the instrumentality of the dollar.
So issues has been that if the government knows them, then why is it taking time?
But they've gone after them. Don't forget, we don't live in a lawless country. It is one thing to accuse a person and make allegations. It's another thing for the court to declare them guilty. Even all what we are saying even still are within the realm of speculation.
Is the still
Section 36 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria provides that a citizen can only be pronounced guilty by court of law. He is innocent until proven guilty. So it's a process. Government will do its bit and allow the judicial arm of government to do its bit. So we don't. If it was not so, then we would have been in a Zoom republic, where anyone can place accusations on anyone and people will go along with it. But we want to see a leaner economy and a more robust economy for Nigerians. A leaner government purse and a robust economy. Perfect.
So do you now feel that the recent report, if sent to the National Assembly, will have to pass through some process before implementation?
Of course. The Minister of Information, at one of his briefings after the Federal Executive Council had announced that the President has given consideration to the Oronsaye report and it will be implemented. And even went further to name some ministries that will be merged. That's a step in the right direction, and I believe that is ongoing.
And the National Assembly will be involved in this?
Oh, that's an arm of, I've told you before, the National Assembly is an independent arm of government.
Don't you feel that in the process of some of the amendments in the National Assembly,
yes, of
there
course.
might be some other...
Yes, I believe that
the
Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice will send, the executive arm will send such necessary amendments to the National Assembly to ensure that its policies and decisions see the light of day and they are actually constitutionally followed. Because don't forget, some of these agencies and ministries are created by law. You don't just fold them.
Exactly.
They must go through enabling legislation.
All right, exactly. All right, that's the much we will be taking today on the issues of cost of governance by government. And of course, it has been good intentions that government must begin to see and engage a system that works, because Nigerians just want a system that works for all. The economy must grow. Dollar must fight. Naira must fight dollar this time around, as it's already making waves. And of course, directive by the CBN for the BDC is not to sell more than 1,026 naira, thereabouts, to $1 is also a step in the right direction. I'll be taking a look at the fact that if government must begin to do this, then we feel. We've also been told that in Senegal, they have actually suspended the Senate and only works with, I think, one arm of the government. That's some other recommendations like that. That was what in light of when I was actually focusing on us running, the House of Reps and at the Senate. It's good for the issues of cutting of cost of governance. But we're not taking a look at that again, just to give you an highlight. And of course, we took a look at the Senegal issues in the elections, where Faye is already leading. And of course, it is our intentions that we get to see him emerge finally as the president-elect of Senegal. That is the size, of course, the package of a discussion on Big Talk on Global Television tonight. My name is Edikan Mike. Many thanks for watching. See you again tomorrow for another episode. Thank you, our legal practitioner, Barrister Kanema Abbas, for joining us on the discussion.
Thank you so much.
To have a wonderful night.